the afternoon session. We will talk about the big CTG data initiative. Well, I've explained yesterday a little bit about the organizations and about the platforms we're having. Yesterday I was talking about our people monitoring platform. Now I will introduce what kind of data warehouses we have, and one of those data warehouses is different from obstetrics, but may carry some ideas and concepts and warnings of what one should consider when one tries to, start to pool precious data from different countries, from different centers. I should also say that the idea to do this it was a joint idea from Olaf Pedersen in Copenhagen, who is head of the, I think, Danish perinatal registry, Antoniya and myself. And they had the idea somehow that it may be a good idea to sketch our experience, our 20-year experience in multiple sclerosis, in order to see then what could one learn from this for the obstetrics field and what could be more of this. Okay, so from that point of view, you can relax a little bit because it's outside of your standard field. On the other hand, it's a warning because some of those things we find here in the MS research are also happening, I think, in obstetrics. So what you see here is an overview of a data collection effort that started 20 years ago or 22 years ago, more or less right at this place, maybe 100 meters away. And over the years, we collected 58 data sets, more than 25,000 patients and 100,000 patient years. And to make this story short, we have two somehow announcements of papers. One on the left-hand side was the original call for proposal published in Nature and funded by the Multiple Sclerosis International Federation. They tried to find a center that they called the International Multiple Sclerosis Trials Research and Resource Center, located either in a university or in a company or some kind of a mix, to fulfill their dream to build the world's largest international MS database, with the idea to convince all pharma companies in the field and all research centers in the field to donate their data into one single center, and then have clever mathematicians, physicists, computer scientists, biostatisticians working on this data set, on this pooled data set, individual pooled data set, individual patient data set, to solve some of the most important problems at that time. And at that time, the field was thinking, we're very good. We have a new drug for MS, that was totally sharing, betaferon, with FDA approval, and we have good outcome measures and everything. And now the problem is, if we now want to improve, we will not be able to convince ethic committees to allow a study with placebo control, because we do have a drug, the drug is working, so it would be unethical to do trials with placebo people. And so there was the idea, let's build this huge database and have a concept to develop virtual placebo groups, such that you can do in the future one-arm trials. So a very nice idea. It's faster, it's more ethical, and it's cheaper. And and we had, as you know, Trion, the company, was a fresh spin-off here at the university, and we've been informed about this proposal by an MS researcher who has done a little project with us in biostatistical analysis of the trial. And we applied together with the university as a spin-off company plus university, and we made it into the last round of 5 groups. It was actually, I think, University of Oxford, it was us, and 3 US companies. And we've been told before the final hearing that it's hopeless. The study center is going to be placed in the US because most of the money was coming from there. But we've been very lucky with my former boss that we managed to get this grant, which was at that time very big for us, 5 billion euros, 5 years. So we started working, on the one hand building the company, on the other hand building now this research center, because that was part of the condition. You have to make sure that you have a legal entity that is able to really host this data and be stable and robust, even if funding at some point will decrease and so on. And okay, so what you've seen before, so this increase of number of studies per year, the burn rate is something like €1 million per year. So that was the cost for actually keeping the machinery up to do all the negotiations with data donors and data protection stuff and so on. And at least some of that work maybe, we are very open to this, may be reused. Yeah, one doesn't have to do this stuff again. Well, then, to fast forward this, I don't give you all the details what happened in these dramas over these 20 years, but the good news is, thanks to his back in there, Christian Lederer, who has been doing a lot of stuff over these 20 years, he survived these 20 years, and we're able to publish a paper that summarizes the outcome. And the outcome is very remarkable, because here the highlights summarized by the editor, they say, well, we challenged established outcome parameters in MS, so we had to tell the field, based on the data we had collected, the outcome measures you're using, the outcome measures that are accepted by FDA and EMA are invalid, not valid, so you have given approval for multi-billion euros drugs that have been done with trials with invalid outcome measures. And the additional predicted value of the expensive MRI scans for certain important phases of the disease are negligible. Yeah? And then, based on these more destructive events, we had then developed new ideas how to do things better, to get better data. And there was the development of a platform, wearable platform that's called Actibel, which is a tool embedded in the belt buckle that is can do a long-term recording of patients moving in their real life over months, that can get meaningful information about the walking behavior and walking speed and so on. So it's a new business that I won't touch now, but that was some of the outcome of, let's say, 20 years of research on a high-quality database. And I think, I mean, we talked about this before, the good thing in this field here is that the field itself has realized how difficult the situation is, and that there's a need for change. So this field, it has taken 20 years, and who gave the arguments why people do not like change. I mean, all the arguments you've given have been happening here. People have published their nonsense, and they have received chairs and funding and so on and so forth. And the aggression to make sure that these papers will never see the light of the day was remarkable. So there have been positive newspapers, they had really tried to do everything that what I just described to you will not be published. Yeah? So therefore, we've survived this, it's out there. And the question is, can we learn some lessons? Yeah? So one lesson is, well, you need to deal with all these are all data sets and data donors, so it's a big effort. Yeah? If you want to really do a data collection effort, you need to have contracts, you need to have legal entities, you need to consider now new regulations like GDPR. But on the other hand, in my view, it is worth the effort, and in principle it's the answer to some of those questions that are floating around, because single institutions with even large data sets, they will never be able to really come up with an answer that can be expounded to all the other countries that would need this. So if the ideal case, in my view, would be really a pooled database with individual patient data. Well, at that time, well, this was 2005, there was a paper from John Ioannidis. I mean, some of you may know this. It was, I think, the most highly cited paper in PLOS medicine. Why most published research findings are false. That was triggered by a series of false research findings in genetics, where he analyzed the reasons why there is so much nonsense in the published literature. And one of the we had the impression, well, if we build the world's largest MS database, we better be sure that if you publish something, then it's right, because there is no data out there that someone else could disprove us. And therefore we had developed and implemented an extremely strict validation policy by separating the data in an exploratory data set, in a validation data set with a split team approach, as is recommended. It's a big effort, but it has, as we have seen, also helped us to avoid false published research findings. It's also something, in my view, that would need to happen in any international database to make sure that even if you want, you could not touch certain parts of the database, because it adds credibility if a different team is actually doing this kind of analysis. Well, that was the series of papers and comments about the depressing story with MRI. MRI did not show any reasonable predictive value. And the other part, well, that had to do with outcomes that are of high interest to patients. You ask them, and it has been done with panels, usual people from Oxford have done this years ago, where they could clearly find for a patient with MS, the most important thing is walking ability. So the fear to lose walking ability is very high, so these patients deserve trials. But new drugs show, yes, on average, the time to wheelchair is 5 years longer than if you don't take the drug. And the outcome measures used are not doing this, and this is something that has also had an impact on the guideline committees from the European Medical Agency. So they have changed the guidelines, and neurologists are now supposed to really try to measure walking ability, walking distance, and walking speed. So regulators listen to these kind of big data analysis. That's somehow my message. Well, we have also developed some tools for somehow either generating virtual placebo groups or to give individualized risk prediction for disease scores. And some of those tools we have matching algorithms that can find for a given group of patients out of a big database a matching group that can be used for analysis, and we've been using this also for some of our own CTG analysis. So there's also methodology available, I would say. Okay, so that is in short our somehow MS experience, MS story. And that is somehow on the one hand completed. The tree is not dead. There is now a new tree coming, which is mobile axiometry, and we strongly believe that these kind of variables will really make a change for the future of clinical trials in MS research. Well, now jumping to the this somehow big CTG data idea, but before now looking into the various concepts that we could be using, some highlights of what I think are elements that will be important, could be tackled. Well, these Cochrane reviews, we have heard about this a couple of times, that this shows already the field is in trouble. Yeah? And there is a need for a better demonstration that all this technology is really doing definitely much more benefit than harm, which is not easy. But when we started this 20 years ago, we also had done some web-based tests, an algorithm for the ability of physicians to be able to find the right FIGO score, and so with the same results that we had before, so there is a high variability and so on. And that was really initially important to get an electronic decision support off the ground. And that was my question to I think the American people, whether we are over this, and we don't have to demonstrate this year and year, and can rely upon at least the consistency of electronic systems to do something. But obviously, this is still a need to do these kind of studies. Well, we have some other groups have, for example, checked the recalculation from the published papers of the short variability, and compared this to the Rose-Redman variability, and the one paper published. But of course, one would like to see this being done by other groups in bigger data sets, in order to expand this and maybe find more insights. So also for these kind of things, it would be great to have a pool of high quality data. Well, then someone was asking, I think in the last panel, what is the magic bullet? And you have a lot of money. What should a good tool, a good device be doing? This CTG over there was shown to me by a physician in Riyadh, when there was a meeting about introducing a central surveillance station. And I was asked the question after having shown the system, does your system have a ping? Everyone couldn't see anything because all the women had been verschleiert. And I could not imagine that back in Riyadh they talked about the Monty Python movie that maybe some of you know. And then I was taking the risk to say, well, probably you mean the ping from Monty Python by saying put it on the woman, and if it makes ping, then it says the baby is alive. So that was at least their wish. This was a CTG that was perfect, and the baby when it was delivered was already 4 days dead. And also here databases that contain, this is just one example, I don't have any more. It would be very valuable to have these kind of also specific examples where you could try to find out some characteristics that it could have. Well, then a short comment about something that hopefully is also going to be influenced by anything like such a big CTG initiative. So guideline committees should listen to these kind of data analysis and data pooling initiatives. My own impression is from all these guidelines that I've been seeing is I'm not impressed at all. I was serving for 9 years in the German Society for Obstetrics and Gynecology about the use of CTG in birth and delivery, and I've seen these committees working. Only men, typically old men, white-haired, voting. And they vote the guy, the normal ranges go up and down, and you sit in there and you say, but hey, we have done the analysis, and they did not care about our analysis, and they did not care about Geoffrey Dawes' analysis when he was still, and he was in the 87 meeting, we have been digging into this, and he was the only one who voted against going from 10/2060 down to 10/50 because he said, well, there is no basis. He had at that time already the electronic database. And so therefore, I think there is a close connection between these big data collections, honest statistical analysis, and impact into these guidelines. So I think with these guideline committees, there is a real need that either the composition needs to be different, or they need to have collaborative efforts where other people feed in information. Last example here, there was also voting going on, and they said, well, before a coffee break, well, two times Figo yellow. Should it be red or should we keep it yellow? And then they said, okay, let's do it red. And they said, hey guys, I mean, the false alarm rate is going to explode. But there was coffee break, so this is not good. Yeah. And I don't know, I have no insight about the work in other committees, but some of those, also Figo summary papers, it's more a statement about we agree that we disagree. And this is not, maybe it's not my impression. Okay, so I'd like to then come to this is the last slide before starting the panel discussion. So I've shown you yesterday our tiny little, it's not big data, it's a tiny little big data analysis where we look into the normal ranges, where we could also find that there is a decrease of the normal ranges as gestational age. The question is, it should be a low-hanging fruit. It's obvious everyone knows this, but why couldn't this be implemented in some of the electronic tools? Yeah? It's not fancy. You don't have to do machine learning. It's there. I mean, it goes down. So why do you have the same thresholds for the early babies as for the late ones? Just one example. Many options. There are a couple of, so I've told you our structure that we've been using for MS research. So there's a legal entity, and we've got the contract, and we've got the articles of association. We know it has worked, it has survived even strong attacks when the data donors and the financial supporters were not enthusiastic about the scientific output. Even this could be survived, so it's a stable structure to a certain extent. But there are other new developments on the European level. Darwin is one of those initiatives. I don't know who has heard about this. So they start not just to have concepts, but there is money, I think, coming from after having moved out of London to Amsterdam. But I have not looked into this in detail, but it looks as if they have understood that these kind of initiatives will be needed also for their decision making, because they do not have the capacity at the moment to make these decisions. So they need to have access to data and analysis to inform their decision making. And we've also heard when we talked to Olaf that it may be difficult to really pool the data to one box, which in my view adds to credibility and quality and so on. And they have a different concept to say, well, we have to bring the analysis to the data sets, such that the data sets don't have to leave the country or the hospital. On the other hand, the complexity is remarkable on these kind of things that you do if you want to do machine learning on these kind of distributed data sets. But if it's not possible to pool them, then this is the only other option I would see. And if this is also not happening, then it's relatively hopeless to make significant progress, in my view. Well, Antoniya, you have found two interesting things. This one was the neonatal database, and the other one the Eden database. And the question is, if you could briefly, I think you talked to one of those directors of this initiative.
Yeah, so the Imperial College London, so the top ones, I'm still due to send her an email. Probably Austin knows more about this stuff or not. So it seems, yeah, I don't know enough. But the top one, I've promised her an email 1 week ago. So I will go further on that. It's something that is initiated from UK, but my understanding is most of their data is European. And what she said in a very quick personal chat between conference talks was that, if I remember correctly, that the UK data is less reliable and they actually rely on the European one. It's really, I'm on it. So the other one as well was, what was the other one? I just found these things, and now that it's on my mind, I just forward to you, but I don't know any of
that's fine. All I'm saying is there are some initiatives, I don't know them, but they may be good and they may have the perfect structure. Some of them have been developed with European funding to have these structures. And now, of course, it is an effort now to try to do this. In my view, this was the last comment here. There's an effort, and there are data privacy things, the GDPR and so on, ethical topics. But my view is, having heard about this and having been in this field for 20 years, it would be unethical not to try to do this effort. The most important part is collecting data with a high quality in a way that you can do an honest analysis. So that's the crucial part.
Yeah, sorry, I told you my memory is very weak. Yeah, now it's coming to me. What I found very interesting about the top one, the neonatal, which is hosted in the UK in London, was, so it's online. So when you go dig into it, you actually see all the pregnancy parameters they already have. So actually I need to deal with it, but I had a quick look only at it at a time 1 week ago. They have already so many things. So when I went to her and I said, you know what, I'm Antoniya, blah, blah, and I was like, all you need to do is add the CTG, because you already have actually almost everything that I need. All we need is to add to you the digital CTGs. So obviously it was a quick conversation, but she said, oh yeah, you need to come on my panel about maternity data or whatever. And I was like, but no, but we want to add the CTG data. But it's actually, if you dig into it, you see that they already have a lot of maternity, because they're collecting neonatal, yeah. So they have all the neonatal ones, but they actually have all the pregnancy relevant. I felt that only the CTG is missing, so that kind of problem of collecting, linking and so on, if you can get the digital CTGs, that might be an infrastructure that you could piggyback. I'm due to follow.
Yeah, it's certainly a good idea. Maybe one final comment before starting on the panel. So we've been trying over the years different ways to have an elegant way to collect data. So institutions that somehow should be responsible. For example, the Medical Agency, they have a network called NSEP, and HTA, Healthcare Technology Assessment, but they all moved this away. They didn't feel responsible for doing this and hosting this somehow, although it would be to their benefit, when they have to make decisions about the healthcare technology assessment of electronic fetal monitoring in Europe. Well, it should be interesting. And there is in Germany, and I think similar things exist in other countries, on a state-wise, so Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia and so on, they all have their central quality management systems, and the clinics, they have to export their outcome data on a yearly basis, a quarterly basis, in a standardized format. So all the vendors that sell these kind of documentation systems, they have to have a validated export function, such that all the clinics have to export this into the central database. And they look into this, and if one clinic has a very low C-section rate, the committee goes there, tries to find out how do they do this. And if some have 80% C-section rate, they also go there and say, well, can you explain what's going on here? And so I would have thought it's a natural place for these institutions to also try to get the CDG data. And the feedback there was, if there's any involvement of the company, they will not do this. But apart from people who have some link to a company, nobody's doing this effort, so also this failed. So it's not going to be easy, but in my view, it's the only chance that in 10 or 20 years when we meet again, people are still alive, that there is visible progress.
Maybe that should be the first question for the panel. Who has the main interest? Who has the main motivation? It's like when you pestered me weeks ago when we first met in person months ago about, I don't want to lead that, I'm too busy, I can't lead on that. Someone needs to put a lot of effort, at least one human being who needs to make, get funded and make that their mission, at least one. And so who are the people who are people who are very motivated for this? Is it scientists from a university? Is it governing bodies? Is it hospitals? Is it healthcare systems? So I think that's an open question too.
So let's maybe the last question to the panel.
The last question, okay. One comment I would make, because you've put the Vašek's paper, which actually used your data, right? Because that was a great collaboration between your hospital. Thank you still for that. It's the most cited paper in the field. It's 500 traces that someone put online available, and everyone is using them. And I think Peter is going to comment about what happens in China with that data when they get 99.9% sensitivity specificity. But that's another question. But even 552 traces have gone a long way because someone shared them. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm done with my presentation, and then I would like to invite the panel to come to the table.